So welcome everybody to a special Blab experiment. As you can hopefully see, I don't know if it's showing up in the recording or not. My name is John Leland from combridges.com, and my special guest or partner in this adventure that we're on today is Michael Cass. Your website is
www.michaelcass.co, because .com is taken by a realtor in Seattle who hasn't updated it since 2004. So
michaelcass.co.co.
Yeah, .co.
And Michael is a new friend of mine who I actually met through a group coaching program that we're both in, a soon to go away program. So we're not inviting you to join us because at the end of April, it's over forever. And so we can talk more about that, but that's how we met. And there was just like kind of this immediate synergy. And Michael offered me and so his expertise is storytelling and authenticity, and really we call it spirit guided authenticity. And that's authenticity is something that I talk about all the time because we have this amazing media here, video that actually lets people be present and have an experience. So Michael is going to guide me for about 10 minutes, right?
Yeah, 10 or 15 minutes. We'll see where we get. Yeah.
So he's going to use me as a guinea pig to demonstrate how powerful his techniques are, transform my marketing. By the end of this 10 or 15 minutes, you all are going to love me so much. No, anyway, we can.
No pressure. No, that's a good setup. That's great. Great. No nerves at all.
So we're going to look at my story and how I talk about myself and what I do in terms of how I present myself on the web. And then we're going to then open it up. So it's just going to be the two of us for this 10 or 15-minute experiment. You all will get to experience what I go through, what Michael delivers, and how that process works, hopefully with an eye towards how that might be relevant to you and how you can tell your story better and engage better via the web, because that's the whole point of this is authenticity, vulnerability, a la Brene Brown. If you don't know who she is, Google it, Brene Brown. Her TED Talk, The Power of Vulnerability, to me at least, is required viewing. And I think we're both kind of aligned on that, right, Michael?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah.
So we're going to demonstrate that has value and how it might be possible for anyone, have big business, small business, solopreneur, Fortune 500 company, to have their message become more powerful through authentic, vulnerable storytelling.
Absolutely. And so here's what we'll do. We're going to do this exercise. And just for folks watching, there's been no prep. John has no idea what's about to happen. Neither do I. It's going to be very exciting. And then so we're going to do the thing, and then we'll all talk about what it was and the methodology behind it and what we discovered. So, John, are you ready?
And also invite you all to say that was really useful. That really sucked. I can't believe how full of airy-fairy air you guys are. Whatever.
So everybody light some sage and get your crystals all ready. And so here's what we'll do.
I have one other thing to say.
Yeah.
So we did say in the advertising or promo, whatever, for this blab, that this is about spirit-guided authenticity, spirit-guided storytelling. So I just want to state my intention that this be powered by spirit, cosmos, universe, whatever language you like or are comfortable with. But this is about actually having the force, as in the Star Wars said, have the force be with us in terms of powering our storytelling.
Yes, let's invite in the spirit of Yoda to the blab. So, and actually, folks watching, you can do this exercise as well along with John. And John, it's up to you. You can close your eyes and keep them open. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to ask you some questions. Don't respond. Just allow yourself to experience whatever comes to you. And then we'll do that for maybe a minute or two, and then come back and share whatever story pops into your mind. Okay. Ready? All right, here we go. So just take a deep breath. Get present. I know there was some technical stuff, so just continuing to let go of that. And I'm just going to invite you to think about a time where you really wanted something. And it can be when you were a kid, it could be a month ago. But it just wants to be something that you really wanted in a deep way. And I think I'm getting an echo on your end. I don't know if anybody else can hear it. Oh, there we go. But you wanted it in a deep way. So if you didn't get this thing, it would be really bad. and it's a concrete thing. And so think about not just what it was you wanted, but what you thought it would do for you. So you get this and your life changes in some way. How is your life going to change? And you may find that a few different things are flitting around. That's fine. Just allow one to surface naturally. Usually the first one that comes up is the one that wants to be told, right? So now think about what stood between you and your goal. We're going to put you on a quest, right? What's the obstacle? What are any sensations that are coming to you? Any qualities of the light, smells, tastes, emotions? And what's your emotional stance towards this obstacle? Does it scare you? Is it exciting? And if you really want this thing, right, you're not going to let that obstacle just sit there. You're going to try to overcome it. So how do you overcome or attempt to overcome this obstacle? Do you do it alone? Do you do it with people? Really giving yourself these couple of minutes to re-experience this journey. Once you overcame the obstacle, right, one of two things happened. Either you got the Holy Grail, the object of your quest, in which case, awesome. Who are you in the moment of victory? And did getting the object of your quest do what you thought it would when you set out? Did it change your life in the way that you thought it would? And if you didn't get it, that's fine. What did you learn from that? Who are you in the moment of not getting what you want? Did you try again? And then at the end of all of this epic journey, you've learned something. It might just be a small thing, but something has shifted for you. What is that? What do you take away from it? And when you're ready, go ahead and come on back and just share the story of the thing you wanted and the quest you went on.
Well, it's really personal, and
Yeah.
I invited vulnerability and so forth, and I just had to say by preference, even though this doesn't involve another person, this is about my personal journey and what I went through.
Great.
But I realized, I got divorced about 2.5 years ago, and I realized in the process of getting that divorce that I had actually had the thought for a long time. So the first thing that came up, and I kept going, this is too personal, let's find something else. And then that was like, I stayed with it anyway, because that was what was really present, was that I wanted a divorce. And that I mean, really the way the desire expressed itself early on was, how am I going to get out of this relationship? And I wasn't even saying it out loud. It was in my head. And I mean, I have really close friends that I confide in quite openly. And I sort of was in shock when I realized, oh, I had been having this conversation in my head. How am I going to get out of this relationship? And never even said it out loud. And then it did unfold, and a whole process, and first a trial separation, and then ultimately getting clear that I did want a divorce. I mean, a period of probably a year. I mean, the trial separation to the decision to get a divorce was more like 4 months. The truth is that I feel liberated. I mean, it's like, in terms of the result. So I did get the the answer in the end was, yes, I got out of that relationship and I am a free man now. It's really rekindled like a rebirth of me coming back to being my own self. My dancing bareness is how I say it, because I used to be known as Dancing Bear and do media back in the 70s under that name. And clearly you asked about the obstacles. I mean, there was this heavy emotional fear of it was, talk about a disturbance in the force. It was, going to totally upend my entire life and this stability. And I mean, it was an 18-year marriage and like a 21-year relationship. So it was a big traumatic thing that I was wanting, but afraid to ask for, really.
Yeah. And when you, first of all, thank you for, I mean, you just went for it. You just went right to the thing. It's perfect.
That's me, baby.
So is it cool to explore that a little bit? Great.
That's what we're here for.
Great. So when you realized or started to realize in this unexpressed way that you wanted out of the relationship, were you conscious that you were seeking freedom, or did that, or was there something else? Was it the discomfort? What what was it that really
well,
brought those thoughts out?
I was conscious that I was not free.
Right.
It wasn't like I'm looking for the freedom. It was like, there's just too much here that's, kind of walking on eggshells, making a frit and don't want to upset the apple cart kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's about as good a metaphor as there is, probably.
Yeah.
I was really afraid to upset the apple cart, but I knew that it wasn't the cart that I wanted to be in either.
Totally.
It's a little bit Humpty Dumpty. It was. Are we really going to be able to put the pieces back together again?
Yeah. Yeah.
And what, I don't even know what that meant, right? Because it's like I can speak about it now, 2.5 years later, with some perspective. But when I was in the middle of it, I just had no idea other than the next step was out.
Mm-hmm. And can you take us to the moment, or you remember the moment that you first, expressed this desire to get a divorce sort of out loud? What was that? What was that moment?
It was a result. It was after the trial separation. So I had, I think it was 2.5 months as a bachelor in this trial mode with a whole formal agreement around that. Mm-hmm. And you asked also about, are you doing it alone? Or are you doing it with people? I mean, I had awesome support from really close friends. And there was a point where I got clear, and then to express that to my former spouse was really like pulling, like, I want a divorce. I mean, it was really like very, very difficult for me to say that. Mm-hmm. I knew I needed to, so I did.
Yeah. And in the moment after you did it, what did you feel?
Relief.
Yeah.
And release.
Yeah. Yeah. Great. Talk a little more about the role that your friends played in this process. You sort of just touched on it, but I'd love to hear more about what that dynamic was and how you brought your community into the process.
Well, I one of the things I've learned about myself, and certainly this whole process has been a big part of that in terms of my clarity about it, is that I just thrive in relationship. And even part of the reason I reached out to you and we're doing this experiment today is like, I like just to explore a possible relationship with you. But I have really, I have friends who are therapists, friends who are very wise and who have done a lot of recovery programs and all kinds of stuff. And so and a lot of them knew my former spouse, and it was, so there was feedback and things, learning about how I was viewed from the outside world in terms of the relationship, and just being able to verbalize, I journal and do things like that, which I find really useful, but I learn things about myself and about where I'm at by talking to other people all the time. Pretty much every day I have some kind of conversation like that where just I learn new things about me by speaking. In relationship, in conversation with other people.
Yeah, awesome. So let's how has the divorce and that process, how has that impacted your business and your work and your approach to it?
It's been a journey. It's been a little bit of a roller coaster. But I mean, initially I would say the first year, I took a lot of naps,
Sure.
Which is not an answer to the question. Well, I guess that impacted my business in some way. But I just had like a monumental amount of processing to do and adjusting to the new reality and grieving the loss of the relationship and the marriage, which was a huge part of my life. And then, kind of more recently, the last 18 months has been a progress. Well, the last year has, kind of turned. And then this year, particularly, I did this play shop event at the end of January that was really kind of with our coach, Andrea. And there was really a milestone kind of breakthrough, and specific business stuff came out of that. And other stuff has just sort of, it was an energy shift. And the business has been really kind of prosperous since January, February, March, and up to the present moment.
Cool.
So it's been a not a straight line, but it's been a process. Did I answer the question?
Absolutely. Wouldn't it be nice if everything were just a super straight line and it was that simple? Like, oh,
if you made a decision that was the right decision for you, and boom, it's all good. Okay, now we're happily ever after. That's done.
Yeah, but it would be a great story. So great. So what I love about this story, first of all, is that it is full of who you are as a human being. Meaning, right, that particularly this exercise, here's what we learn. We learn what's valuable to you. We learn who you are in moments of extreme challenge. Because some people, right, it's always in those moments that you don't realize you're making a decision that the biggest decisions are made. And so the way that you approached finally, moving into a trial separation and then giving a divorce, and the resistance you felt is very different. It's unique to you, right? The way that you went about doing that, the way that you reach out to community. And, I don't know you that well, but I also know that that same passion for discovering through other people underlies your business, right? That idea of conversation, things like this, like we learn about each other through conversation. This idea of freedom and liberation and getting to the point, right? These are deeply human things that come from your uniquely specific human experience. And so anybody listening to this story, like I've never been divorced, but I've felt that deep need to be out of a relationship, whether it's a work relationship or a romantic, like it's the work and the personal at a certain point become conflated, right? They sort of have to, especially if you're an entrepreneur, if you're marketing your own thing. Right. And so, I learn all these things about you, and I can see, if you were to, it wouldn't necessarily be appropriate to share that with every client, right? But for some people, they might really resonate with it because it is about authenticity, and you can draw, or I'll just ask you, how could you use that story, or what is the link between that story and the themes that emerged out of it and your business and the way you go about promoting it and talking about it?
It's really, I'm really glad you asked that question. I sort of wanted you to ask that question before you even started asking it. We didn't rehearse this, folks.
No.
It's really actually a profound thing for me. And I was just having a conversation with a really close, intimate friend this morning who was acknowledging and appreciating my exuberance. And that I relate that to the freedom that you're talking about.
Yeah.
And I've thought about it in terms of enthusiasm, right? I'm enthusiastic about social media and new forms of communication. And there are areas where, like, I've been thinking about doing more of this kind of stuff and more just videos and just do it. So the story relates to me because I need to be more full on the exuberant. Dancing Bear is my metaphor for that character, that aspect of my personality. And so that's where I see it. And I think that is, a huge part of what's attractive to me. Like, I have this expertise about communications and about media, but to say it in a gross way, it's like, I'm not interested in being a scholar, and I'm not really interested in just, knowledge transfer, right? I'm interested in the spiritual, enthusiastic, come from your heart communication that makes a difference and really connects people. Yeah. And so the story relates to me swinging out more and letting it go. And I mean, this is perfect. I mean, I am doing it today because this is for me a form of play. And I even posted a Julia Cameron quote on social media just yesterday or the day before about how great art comes from real play, something like that. And that's something that I've been thinking and kind of imbibing over a number of years is, just have fun. I mean, life can be fun, business can be fun, love obviously can be fun, all of it can be fun. And, I still get stuck in the shoulds and doing it right and yada, yada, yada. And it's not who I am. And that's not how I want to market.
Yeah. It's interesting as you're speaking, there's another thing that's coming up for me, which is that for a lot of people, myself included, marketing, social media, all of this stuff is a huge, it brings up all of your stuff because you're putting yourself out there in a way, right? And as I think about your story and sort of the courage it took to upset the apple cart and kind of, deconstruct and tear something down that had been almost 2 decades there's a sense in which a lot of times when we're doing marketing or coming up with a business, and we've seen it a lot in sort of our coaching group with Andrea, where people have to have the courage to say, oh, wow, I went a certain way down this road and this isn't the right thing. Like my marketing isn't, like, I'm either marketing the wrong thing or I'm marketing the right thing, and the way I'm doing it is completely wrong and it feels misaligned, right? So it's almost as if sometimes the relationship we're in with our messaging moves out of alignment and becomes confining. And that resonates too.
Yeah. I mean, in fact, the issue is, and I talk about this all the time, and it's even in plug my book, it is this whole need to experiment, right? I mean, we're on the media environment that you and I are playing in today, and that everybody plays in social media, is changing so fast that you have to experiment. You have to take risks, and I mean, every friggin' entrepreneur book ever written says there are going to be failures, and every successful entrepreneur has multiple failures. And I'm not even talking about failures. I'm just talking about try little stuff. The strategy part of it, and we're getting off track a little bit, but is do small stuff, try little small stuff, and see where you find a sweet spot. But having the courage to experiment, making the time so that that not everything is going to be a home run, and you're going to try different things and experiment, play, have fun with that. Very few people really do it, and I want to do more of it and kind of need to do more of it. This is an example of me doing a little more of it. This is we're not even doing lead capture. We're just like, you and I
just
are
doing it.
We think we have some value to share, and we'll hang out and we'll see what people think, and we'll put up the recording, and it's like a step in a good direction. If there's feedback that people want more of it, great. And if not, we learn from just having fun doing this. And that was valuable. I'll definitely say that. I mean, it's just like a nice reinforcement of that, I'm a creative, exuberant being, and it's about having fun and being creative is like.
Yeah. And the big thing, and the reason that this sort of story coaching works, is that you're you, whether you're working or in your personal life or whatever, right? And a lot of times we try to put stuff in silos, and it doesn't work. It leads to a sense of just profound unease, or even dis-ease if it gets really bad. Like I have a friend who works for Bank of America, and he really I won't say, he works somewhere, I won't say, whatever. He doesn't like it. And he, is stressed and depressed. And you talk to him about his story, and all he wants to do in the world is literally like open a cheese shop. That's all. He loves cheese. He wants to be part owner in a cheese shop, and he has a lot of fear holding him back. And literally his body is rebelling against him. Like his appendix burst for no good reason. He's, weight gain, all of that. And so there's a sense in which when we go into these personal stories and reconnect with the core values that live inside of them, that are there. I mean, that was one prompt, and the story was right there. That whole exercise took maybe 5 or 6 minutes. We very quickly got back to some of your core values and what it means to be who you are when you're like at your most free and at your best. This dancing, I love this dancing bear image, right? And we
I got pictures to go with it.
Terrifying and awesome. So there's a sense in which, right, like we spend all this time like funnels and strategy and how do we do it, and get distracted from who we are as human beings. And I think that's where the spirit guided part comes in, right? Spirit for me is just anything that connects us to something greater than ourselves. It doesn't have to be, we don't have to be precious about it. It's just a real thing. And infusing that into your messaging makes it resonate in a different way. Because there, as you said, earlier, there's so much out there. Everybody's telling stories now, and most of them are terrible because they're not going particularly deep, and they're overly massaged, and they all follow the same beats. And there's something
formulaic.
They're formulaic, and there's something that can't be replicated by anyone other than you about your story. So like I could try to do it. So it's a really powerful way of
let's open it up.
Yeah.
But the one other thing that I do want to say is that inquiry into I guess it's like your soul's desire.
Yeah.
Like that story is something that I've shared and which was part of kind of the divorce process for me. Mm-hmm. But when you asked about remember something that you really wanted, I didn't even know I wanted it back when I was saying, how am I going to get, when the voice was saying, how am I going to get out of this relationship? And I didn't know that I wanted to get out of the relationship. And I wasn't even saying to close, intimate friends, let alone my partner, that I really wanted out.
Yeah.
And it took, that actually was a number of years before it really became like, and me going through a whole real transformation to be willing to say that I wanted out.
Yeah.
But anyway, what I'm getting back to is this thing of, I think that it's not only true of me in that story, but that everybody has a need to really look at what their soul is asking and what do you really want? Right. Mm-hmm. That I think there's been stuff about, what is it that you really want? Yeah. Because if you're marketing some shit to make money and unless what you really want in life and your values are that money is the most important thing. And folks, if that's where you're at, think about it. But I don't think anybody watching this is that way, actually.
No. Well, and it's interesting, right? Because there's all sorts of ways that people go about uncovering their soul's calling or their soul's purpose. And there's like, I'm going on a vision quest next week in the desert. I had 4 days, no food in the sun. I'll hopefully see you on the other side. It's crazy.
He is going on a real vision quest.
The truth is that the breadcrumbs that lead us to that purpose are in the stories of our life. They're in a narrative. So like I spend my life now helping people tell their stories and telling stories myself. And I remember when I was 8 and my parents reminded me of this last time I saw them, I literally went up to my mom with a book of fairy tales and I went, I want to be a professor that looks at fairy tales and the way that they impact the cultures they come from. That's just been a part of me forever. Right. And so I could have saved myself a lot of angst if I'd remembered that instead of going the sort of circuitous route I put. So I think that you really touched on what, for me, the real power of this kind of storytelling is, and this kind of inquiry, that we get to find the things we already have instead of striking out to try to do something new, which will bring us to the same place anyway, really starting from who we are, what we've already accomplished, what our true values are as shown in actions and choices we're not even conscious of. And then infusing that into the way we communicate about our work and our lives.
Cool. So I unlocked the other seat. If you want to ask a question, you can do that / thing and do /Q and ask a question. But I would love video comments and questions, what you liked, what you didn't like, what was valuable, what you thought could be more valuable, whatever. We're open to your input. I know there's just a few people who are here live, but any of you are welcome and encouraged. We'd love to have it be a conversation. And also, if you want to tell a bird or invite other people or do any of that stuff, let me know. So we have Hassan, we have Andrew, we have Tish, we have Jerry. I think Peter's still here. I think Fred is still here. How was it for y'all? Who's got the courage to come on and play with us and tell how it was for you and what you thought and whether or not this can make a difference in terms of how you market and present yourself online and in social media? Here comes somebody. Alexandra. Hooking in. Look, it's live. It's people. It's interaction.
It's people conversating.
Look, it's humor beings. Humor beings. Oh,
humor beings.
It's humor beings. Alexandra is taking a minute to connect, and we have another sheet too. If somebody else wants to come on in, we can do that too. Alexandra has an interplanetary icon.
I know.
It doesn't say much about her Blab experience here, so I thought I'd get more info.
Oh, now she's gone.
She must have a bad connection, Alexandra. Are you bandwidth challenged, perhaps, wherever you are? Because for whatever reason, you were starting to connect, and if you want to try again, I'll certainly approve you again, and we can give it another shot. Or you and I can talk. We have no shortage of stuff.
We'll talk about things and stuff.
Peter, what did you think? I see you're still here. That's my good buddy Peter. Actually, one of the people that I talk to in the world is Peter Klein. There with the whatever. Alexandra seemed to have crashed. She came back, so maybe she'll give it another shot. But so we could let people know how to hook up with us. I'm at combridges.com. You're at michaelcass.co.
Yeah.
And what else do we? And go ahead.
So I've got a fun thing that's free. That is a. Oh no, Alexandra, the whole thing froze. But welcome back. So
try again.
So I've got, if you go to my website under resources, there's a free leadership storytelling class that actually takes you through the process. It's an email correspondence class. It's just automated emails, but it takes you through the process of building leadership stories. It's good. Here's what'll happen. You'll get to a point and probably get a little bit frustrated or have some sort of resistance come up, particularly if the stories are kind of vulnerable, which is fine. It's just a question of, and the course takes you through the process of that. But it kind of takes you through the process that John and I just went through of generating some material and then figuring out what the themes are and linking it to your business. It's not quite the same because it's just questions on a sheet of paper, but it's a really cool resource that I think a couple hundred people have been through now, and so I'm constantly tweaking it. I'd love to have you give me feedback on it. It's free for the time being, but not forever.
Yeah, I'm interested in this whole area of online courses. I think we've talked about that. Alexander, if you want to try coming in again, we can give it another shot. I don't have a course like that yet. Let me approve her and see what happens. I do have an introductory website and social media office. There you are.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can.
Oh, that's
welcome.
amazing.
Where in the world are you?
I am in San Francisco.
Oh, perfect. It's across the bay from me. Michael's in California, by the way.
Nice
so,
down in LA.
What did you want to say or ask?
Well, I really enjoyed this whole conversation.
Awesome.
And I always find it somewhat easier to tell stories about my personal life. Mm-hmm. And I find it very complicated to find stories that would relate in a business context.
Mm-hmm.
I've watched a few even TED Talks and they're great. And then what can I say in my business context that will make people interested and engaged?
Mm-hmm. Can I ask what kind of business you're in?
I do on-site water recycling for nonprofit business.
Great. So
beautiful.
I think the key, right, is that there's always, and it depends who you're talking to. Like the first rule is you always know who your audience is. And so sometimes, I talked to someone who works with Bill Gates, and I was coaching her on, hey, here's how you tell a personal story. And she stopped me and she went, he doesn't care. He cares about numbers. So for her, the stories to tell had more to do with data and where the data comes from, which is still a story. It's not one that we would normally think of as, pulling at the heartstrings. Mm-hmm. So I think you put your finger on a pretty big challenge, and the answer is, know who you're talking to and what resonates with them, but also trust the universality of human experience. So it might not be a story like John's was about going through a divorce, but it could be how you came to the work or where the value of the work lies for you. It's finding those resonances. I wish I had like a easy 3-step process for you. it's sort of this beautiful balancing point between art and science. But if you go to my website and look at the leadership storytelling course under the resources, it actually leads you through the process that can help draw that link.
I'll check that out. Certainly.
Awesome.
Thank you very much.
I have a quick question, which is, that's a very specific, do you say recycling water systems? Is that right?
Yes.
What made you choose that specific niche, that specific, very targeted service?
I'm an architect, and I've worked with sustainable construction for almost 20 years. And I used to live in Brazil, and the whole southeastern part of Brazil has been in a serious drought situation for 3 years. And then I moved to California, and it's the same situation. And a lot of people still in denial, but you check the science and it's here to stay. The drought is not going to go away. So I know a lot about that industry, and I decided to focus on that. So
there's an underlying passion for. Totally. Yeah, and do you think that that's fully expressed in your marketing and how you represent yourself, how much you care about that problem and the degree of your concern?
That's a good question. I did a lunch and learn session last week for an engineering firm, and I prepared the presentation and all the topics. And then I said, these people have no idea who I am. Why should they trust me? Perfect. So at the last minute, at the night, the evening before, I introduced one slide, a special project I did in Brazil in 2002, which was the Eco House project, and what happened and why, what worked, what didn't work, and to let them know that was the beginning of my relationship with water recycling, and how that evolved through the years. And I feel that was an interesting way to start it. I wouldn't have done that. I've never done that before, because maybe in Brazil, I'm well known and people know me, and I think now looking back, this kind of attitude would have helped in many instances, but I did it out of, I think, absolute necessity, that nobody knows me here, and why should they trust me?
That's perfect. I think that's an amazing example of using what I would call a leadership story, right? That says who you are and what you're doing there. What you're doing there, meaning just like, why should they even listen to you?
Yes, exactly.
Right? And what your vision is. And doing that through story, just the way our brains are wired, means that it'll take, right? There's two ways you could have done it. One is to just list your qualifications.
Exactly. That's what we do all the time. You're trained to do it that way.
Yeah, and nobody cares is what happens. It just sort of grays out in white noise. Whereas if you link it to a project and you link it to your story of how you became involved in this and how you come to be here, suddenly people are able to connect the dots, and you become much more real to them, both as a human being and also as a potential, service provider, client, etc. So it sounds like you did the exact right thing.
But it's funny that it was a very, very last minute thing.
Yeah.
You got guided for an extra step there, but I agree with Michael that you provided us a beautiful example, because this issue of they don't know, I think were your words, I hope I got them right, were they don't know who I am. And part of my philosophy and my understanding about business, and I have had my own business now for over 30 years, is that it's all about relationships. And you don't get into a relationship with somebody who you don't know who they are. And so all of the content doesn't really matter. It's really about who are you and communicating who you are. And then you'll fill in the gaps in terms of the content. And then the other thing that Michael mentioned is trust. It's like, and that we talk about in social media and what we're coming to understand. And part of what I teach in some of my workshops and I did in the Play Shop, one of my most favorite all-time cartoons is a New Yorker cartoon of these two dogs sitting at a computer. and one dog says to the other on the internet, nobody knows that you're a dog. And on the internet, nobody knows who you are. You might as well be a dog. And unless you communicate something authentic, something real about who you are, so that they can begin to engage in a human way, right? It's not about technology, it's about communication. And only from that kind of human connection does trust happen. Right? That's what established it. Or it might be another human being going, I think Michael's the real deal, and I trust him, and I think
I have one observation here. It's like that. Not everybody wants to hear that. Like the example you just gave us, and I did a master's course in Sweden on sustainability, and a lot of the students in my class had this question. I mean, we're trying to talk about sustainability to people and they don't want to listen. And the professor said, well, then go talk to somebody else who wants to listen.
Yeah.
Because of course, yeah. It has been in my mind ever since.
It's interesting because there's two ways to think about that. It's like, one, absolutely, some people are just never going to hear the message. The other is that if you're trying to communicate with people, particularly about things like sustainability, and you lead with data, and the people you're speaking to don't already agree with you, it won't work. It won't penetrate, because they're telling themselves a story that sustainability isn't important, that the environment's fine. No amount of evidence is going to change that. But what can change it is changing their story around the importance of sustainability. And the way to do that is to tell them, for example, and it depends who you're speaking to, a very specific story about human beings who have been impacted by climate change or by drought. And letting them identify personally with that impact, and then inviting them to be a part of the solution so that it never happens again. Because our tendency, right, especially if you're in any kind of engineering or science, is to say, look at all of this incredible data I have. Unless I agree with you, it won't work. I mean, you see so many examples of it from the vaccine versus anti-vaccine, gay marriage. Like, there's studies on both sides, whichever one you believe. I can quote data that supports anything. The key is, how do you have to connect with people really deeply before you can get them on your side. And even then, there are some people that, it's not going to work, move on, find other people.
And this notion of tribe, I mean, that is really kind of what you're talking about, that there are people that are synergistic and have affinity for what you're talking about. And it's really important to know who you're talking to, whether you're talking to somebody is aligned and you can help them move the water cause forward, versus global warming deniers, for example, who are, probably never going to be convinced. It's like, just because they have such a hard position. The thing that I think relates, and Michael, I don't know if you have a comment about this, but it's like the most compelling argument about climate change to me that I think I see working almost universally is when you bring up grandchildren, which everybody that's a human being, has a sense of the legacy in children. And as a grandfather, I can say grandchildren, and what kind of a planet are we going to be leaving for our grandchildren and our great-grandchildren if we don't do something about this crisis. And, because, indigenous people, they think in terms of like the lineage and going out into like generations and generations. But the people that are in denial, to me, are always looking, okay, right now, or what are we going to put in our pockets? And, what kind of new Mercedes are we going to buy? And if you start thinking about what's going to happen to the planet and where it's going to be in 50 years, or 100 years, or 500 years, you definitely have to chart a different course. But anyway, we're talking about that's a kind of a story that is, can be very personal. When you start, if you're a grandparent and you start thinking about your grandkids, it's a different perspective than what am I going to have for lunch today?
Great.
Thanks so much for participating, Alexander.
Thank you very much.
Thank
and
you.
We have another seat to hang out or not. You can stay up or don't stay up, or you can click the close button or hang out. because we have an open seat. If we just,
no, now it unfroze. Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks, Alexandra.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. So we probably taken that. We said we are going to do an hour. We did start late because of my technical audio issues. If anybody else wants to jump in, ask a question, make a comment, you're welcome to do so. Otherwise, I think we can declare this a success.
I think
It's
so.
really great doing it with you, Michael. Yeah, awesome. And thank you, everybody who's still watching or who did watch or who is watching in the future via the recording. Really appreciate your attention, and I hope it's valuable. And you have our Twitter handles for sure, so you can communicate with us like that. My website, again, is combridges.com. My best email is jleland, JLELAND, at gmail.com. And I welcome inquiries. There's also at combridges.com a contact form. I do low budget Squarespace websites. I love mentoring people with Squarespace if you need a quick website. And I mentioned my strategy, social media website audit, and strategy is another great way in. There's a link to that on my homepage at combridges.com. Michael, anything you want to say in closing?
I've got so many things.
Amazon.com. Don't forget.
Don't forget your
this is like my 101 primer, getting started with internet marketing from my point of view, but differentiating search engine optimization, social media advertising, social media, which that book's old enough that I call it viral word of mouth, but it's still quite relevant. 13 5-star reviews.
Oh my goodness. That's 65 stars. So when so you can check out my website, michaelcass.co. Best email for me is simply michaelcass@gmail.com. And this is what I do. I help people tell their stories. I work with TEDx speakers. I work with executives who need to speak more powerfully with greater confidence. I help them reconnect with their story. I'd love working with folks. So if you're interested in chatting more about it, just feel free to reach out via email, Twitter, whatever, LinkedIn, Smoke Signal. The invitation I'll make to you as we wind up is just start becoming conscious of the fact that we are moving in a world full of stories all the time. And that at this very moment, you are shedding data that people are interpreting into stories, because that's what our brains do. And so there's an opportunity to start connecting with the power of your narrative and telling it more consciously. Because if you don't do it, other people already are. So why not take control of it? That's sort of my big rallying cry. So thank you so much for watching. And John, thank you for having this idea. This was incredibly fun. I had a great time. And thank you for really diving into the storytelling exercise. It made my job so much easier.
It was really fun. Thank you. Thank you for your all the value that you brought to it, Michael. And it's good. We'll keep doing stuff. So thanks, everybody, for watching. I'm going to stop the recording.